Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rock Pile. Tonight, the Rock Pile presents. I'm bringing the guys back. I'm pumped up. It's nice to see everybody back. We'll get Coach Kramer back here in a couple of weeks when we run it back for a second time. But tonight, the Rock Pile presents the No Huddle Podcast. So I'm going to bring the guys on one-on-one tonight, and then we'll go through a series of topics. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, you can put any questions or comments in the box. I'll bring as many over as I can. We have a lot of topics to get to, so we'll see if we can get through all of them tonight. Last time we usually do this, we usually spend 15, 20 minutes on one topic, so I'll try to keep the guys in line. So let me try to introduce these guys individually here. First one up, Coach P, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Awesome.
Not sure what excited me more, though, being on the show with you guys or watching football games this weekend with fans in the stands.
No, absolutely. We got Nicky from CBUS. There he is.
Coach, welcome.
Good to have you.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
There's Coach Medicis.
What's up, sir?
Good to have you. And there's Coach Jake getting ready for the game tomorrow in the orange. I like it. Or is that the Clemson orange?
No, it's RFA orange.
Oh, all right. So you guys, let's dive right into this. I just want to start. We'll kind of go around the horn with just some opening statements for tonight's show. And Jake, I'll start with you since you're my bottom left here on my screen. What do you got for us tonight?
No, I'm just excited to talk some football. And like Pat said, it was incredible watching it. And, I got to watch the Wisconsin game with Penn State game with my son. And that fourth quarter when they're doing that jump around, that it's like it's been over, they said 600 days. And even he was getting excited about that, how they're all jumping up and down and everything. So it's just great that college football is back with fans in the stands.
No, absolutely. Coach Medicis, what do you got?
Thought some coaches on the hot seat had some big wins in week one. Justin Fuentes, we've been saying for 3 or 4 years now, he's got to win a big game. I think he finally did that. And how about Chip Kelly? Is this the year that UCLA, all of a sudden, he's an offensive genius again?
Nicky from CBUS, what do you got for us tonight?
Oh, I'm going to echo what I'm going to go with the first two guys said. The fans in the stands was just amazing, right? It felt like college football was officially back. But what about some great quality matchups week one? I felt like college football hit it out of the park this year. We had ranked opponents. We had upsets. We had a lot of good games, primetime games. I felt like college football took advantage of Labor Day weekend and pushed it to the fullest. It was exciting.
Pat, what do you got?
Just the same thing I mentioned with the fans in the stands and, Virginia Tech doing the Enter Sandman coming out and the jump around with even the guys in the booth were jumping around. I thought that was pretty cool. And I can't wait to give you guys some winners this weekend for picks. And I even have some futures for the college football. So
there we go.
The Piznat's back.
There we go.
So you guys, I got a few things. First of all, for the show for me is the over-under on how many times we talk about Jim Harbaugh getting fired, how many times we're going to talk Dino Babers, which we do every Saturday morning. Is he on the hot seat this year? We'll get into that. But for me, guys, and it's going to be part of my ending, how about the FCS teams that stepped up and won some big games against some of the FBS schools this past Saturday? So for me, it was seeing some of the little guys that didn't get a chance last year with the shortened season, getting a chance to go play the big boys. And my guy from Fordham is going to be a topic at the end, a linebacker. I'll give you a little hint. What a game he had against Nebraska. So you guys, I want to get into the storylines. There's so many storylines coming into this season. And for me, just a couple of them. The hype of Matt Campbell in Iowa State, his name was mentioned for a lot of jobs, including the Michigan job if it opened up. Is this the year that Matt Campbell, preseason number 7 in the country, they struggled last week against Northern Iowa. They struggle every year in the first game, but they still find a way to win. Is this the year he sneaks into the BCF playoff? Many think they're the team to beat other than Oklahoma in the Big 12.
Rock, I'll be honest. I'm not sure that I think they definitely have the talent, right? But it does seem like Iowa State is still destined for that one or two stubbing of their toe. And they got a big contest this week against Iowa. I was trying to look. I can't remember. This might be the first time ever you've seen Iowa versus Iowa State with both teams ranked in the top 10. I can remember watching that game many times where Iowa was favored by 14 or 17, and Iowa State would give them a game and sometimes pull the upset. I love Matt Campbell. I think he's a great coach. I think the Big 12 is laden with offense, which is typically, a recipe for jumping up to get bit a bit. Iowa State, we know, plays defense. But I'm pulling for him. I think it'd be great for the conference to see somebody else in Oklahoma come out in there. But if you had to pin me down right now, I would tell you that they're not going to get there.
Jake, what do you think? What do you got for some of the storylines this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with the Matt Campbell thing. It seems like every time they got eyes on them, they always stumble. They're that team that likes to come in under the radar and surprise teams. So this year now they're starting up that high, and now they're going to get everyone's best best game that week, where they usually can sneak up on teams. And I even watching Texas, even with the Starziaks there, or sorry, I probably pronounced his name wrong, but they looked impressive too. So they got a little bit of a tough road in front of them. One of the storylines was the North Carolina struggling out the gate. They have possibly one of the best quarterbacks that comes back. I know they're missing some weapons up on the outside, but they had their line intact, and they just threw up almost a big goose egg almost. And I was kind of disappointing with that.
Coach Medicis, what do you got?
Yeah, I think to jump back on Matt Campbell, if there's ever a year for him to win the Big 12, it's now. Oklahoma did not look very impressive against Tulane. I mean, that game was – Tulane could have stole that game. And that was supposed to be a Tulane home game. They lost it. I mean, if Tulane knocks you off with Spencer Rattler, who's supposed to be a Heisman candidate, and they didn't really put any points up in that second half, this is the year they have to do it. But I'll tell you what, Texas and Sarkisian looked really good against a good Louisiana team. You got to remember, Louisiana went to Iowa State and beat Matt Campbell in Iowa State in week 1. Texas I wouldn't say manhandled, but they beat them going away. So if there's anything that I'm taking away from the Big 12, I think Texas is going to be better than a lot of people think.
Well, what's interesting too, though, because the last couple of years, Iowa State, there really wasn't the preseason hype. So they were that team that if they won 8-9 games, people were like, "Wow, Iowa State's for real." Now the roles are reversed. Everybody's picking Iowa State to have a shot to beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma looked, I mean, the first game, the offense was there. All we heard in the preseason going into that game with the Big 12, Oklahoma's returning everybody on defense. We don't know how good Tulane is. Tulane's going to be better, but that's a game, first game. They should have manhandled Tulane, and they really struggled in the secondary. So for Iowa State, I hope that I hope they live up to it. But listen, that game against Iowa was impressive that week 1 in their opening round victory. So they were impressive. Absolutely.
You don't forget, though, last year they beat Oklahoma once. They lost to them by 6 in the Big 12 championship. And, week 1, even though it's Iowa, it's still a look-ahead game for them. So I wasn't really surprised they struggled week 1.
Rock, I want to pick up on what you said about Oklahoma returning so many guys on defense, and I think this is a common storyline really across college football, right? With COVID last year, I think you got 14% more production returning across the board across all of college football, and we're going to talk about, I'm sure, the big powers, recycling talent going to the league. You're going to see a lot of teams that we're used to maybe getting stomped on by some of these bigger schools. They're veteran-laden teams now, and they've cut their teeth. There's a lot of people returning, a lot of 5th and 6th year seniors. So games like Tulane, I think you're going to see a lot more of this year, and I think that's going to make the season a lot more exciting. But it's something I have on my eye on for the storylines this year is really just teams that maybe we're used to perennial being mediocre or a little bit below. They're going to be more veteran-laden teams that you're not going to be able to just roll your helmet out there if you're in Oklahoma and Ohio State at Clemson. And just expect to walk over these teams you did before. I think the competition is going to be a little bit fiercer this year.
Well, and I think
if you saw last year and even before, it looks like Oklahoma's a slow starting team, and then they pick up pace going. So if they can get by with a couple of wins in the beginning, and then they start picking up like they've done the last 2 or 3 years, watch out, they could be undefeated. So if they're getting wins, that's the most important thing right now.
Doesn't it kind of remind you of March Madness, where you have these mid-major teams with a bunch of seniors that beat some of these big power schools that are, having freshmen at certain positions where right now with the COVID super senior year, you got guys that are 4 and 5 years into a system and they're able to make plays and make veteran moves where they can steal a game, like Nick said, against some of these bigger, Power 5 teams.
Well, I think you made a point though, because you got, instead of talking about 4 or 5 teams to make the playoffs, we just rattle off probably 6 or 7 of them that are all have legitimate chances to play in that in the playoffs. I mean, Texas A&M. No one's even mentioned Texas A&M on here, and they're another one. There's 9-1 last year, and just I wouldn't look past them either.
You guys, 2 other storylines I had. Obviously, I said the over/under on Jim Harbaugh and Dino Babers, but of course, I had Jim Harbaugh on here as a storyline. Not a great shortened season last year. And then the year before, a 9-4, which we always talk expectations at Michigan are not 9-4. So I'm anxious to see. He brought in, again, an entire new coaching staff outside of Josh Gaddis. It's one of the youngest coaching staffs in the country to try to help recruit a little bit. A lot's going to be defensively. It's a whole new scheme for them this year, switching from that press coverage, that Don Brown blitz defense. So I know it's only Western Michigan. Offense looked good. Defense looked okay, but they'll get another test on Saturday. And the other thing, guys, that I had on mine was what would Florida State be in the ACC? The Florida State Notre Dame. Even before I watched that game, I had Florida State down because I always said this: if Florida State can get back to relevancy again, boy, Florida State given somebody other than Clemson, Jake, a run in that ACC conference, I think would strengthen that conference in general. So I was happy to see Florida State competitive. We'll see if they can do it again, but I think that's going to say something for the ACC.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the more teams, especially, with Bobby Bowden passing away and him building up that program, and it was nice to see them being very competitive. And I think one of the great stories in there was that quarterback, and I forget his name right now, but got hurt from UCF, and he came in cold and just started rounding off and helped that with the comeback. And that's what I think could be something magical there even this year if he stays healthy. That's something those guys can kind of lean on and go with. But, for the ACC, that's all I hear as a Clemson fan is now we play no one. Now you play no one. So it is kind of tough that you do look, and ACC got beat up by the SEC this weekend with Louisville getting crushed, Florida State losing, Clemson and the other teams.
North Carolina
for the ACC.
Yeah.
Hey, I picked Dave Clausen and the boys to go 10-2 on the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch. Don't sleep on Wake Forest and Dave Clausen this year. I had to get that in.
Yeah, we will see. We will see.
Guys, coaches on the hot seat. There's a lot of them coming into this year, and some of them are not off to a good start. But who you guys got? Let's go reverse order. Pat, who you thinking?
Oh, I think you're not going to like it, but number 1 is Harbaugh. I mean,
yes.
it's obvious. I mean, at 42-29 overall, 34-16 in the Big Ten since he's been there. I mean, he's lost 4 games in his last 2 seasons. I mean, the list goes on and on. 2-12 in the last 2-12 against top 10 teams, and then the biggest one, 0-5 against Ohio State. I mean, I got a list of others too, but he tops that list, no doubt about it. And the other thing I was reading too is he had his contract was restructured. Yeah, so this year it's only $4 million for a buyout, and every year after that it goes down $1 million. So in the next couple years, I mean, $2-3 million is nothing to get rid of him and move on.
All right, Nick, C-Bus, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Of course, Harbaugh's at the top of my list. Accepting mediocrity is, I can't believe that I've ever expected a Michigan University football team to accept mediocrity, but that's exactly where they're at. They are terrified of making another Lloyd Carr move and ending up with a Rich Rod, Brady Hoke era, and they've decided, hey, 9 wins, 10 wins isn't so bad. So that's where they're at. And quite honestly, I agree. The structuring of the contract is a way for them to move on, but I think they 1,000% do not want to. The name I'm going to throw out there, though, I think I heard Medicis bring up a couple of good ones. The one I'm going to throw out there is Clay Helton at USC. I just think, it's been too many years in which USC has stayed in mediocrity from that perspective. I think the one thing that really, really drives me with USC is they won 5 games last year, and everybody wanted to crown them like, oh, they're back. And then when you really kind of look at the context, you're like, you really only won 5 games, right? And Chip Kelly's coming. That Battle of California is getting ready to get hot, I think, pretty quickly. So he's a name I got on my hot seat. He has not performed overall great, 45-23 overall record. Never would have stood USC. John Robinson is probably losing the rest of his hair hearing that. So,
Medicis, who you got?
Scott Frost, number 1. I mean, I just that first week is just it can't happen. And then at Orgeron, I mean, 2 years off of Joey Burrows carrying him to a national title, they were average at best. And I mean, UCLA. That wasn't as close as the score came out. UCLA was a much, much better team. And UCLA is not as good as Georgia and Bama and Florida. And the list goes on in that SEC. Another 500 year. And you really got to be thinking, despite the fact that he brought them a national title, that program's headed down, and it's heading down quickly.
So I got to bring over Becky Diuto's comment. I'd love to see Michigan beat Ohio State. If they need a new coach to do it, so be it. I agree, 100%.
They need a new roster on top of a new coach.
Yeah. Geez, that's one low blow. That's one jab at me already on Michigan. Let me get through a show. Jake, who do you got?
I'm going to have to piggyback off Medicis. I think Ed Orgeron, he's struggling out there, and he's coming off that national title, and he had great assistant coaches. Now they've moved on, and people are kind of looking at him like, hey, why aren't we even close? You still have a lot of talent there, and he's not winning there. And then also Scott Frost, they brought him back home, and he is not, I think they gave him I think this is going into his 4th year. So, they've given him time, and they haven't really seen too much improvement there. So those two would be off the top of my head.
Not to mention, Rock, with Scott Frost, he got dinged for NCAA violations for practice during COVID, and it didn't do a whole lot of any good last year, right? So that's just more optics working against him for sure.
Well, I got all the names you guys said. Of course, I got Jim Harbaugh, Scott Frost. I said Justin Fuentes coming in, but after that big win against North Carolina, probably changed things. I said Dino Babers, but I agree, Nick. I had Clay Helton as one of my top 2. But, if you think about the Scott Frost piece, and I said this, Nick, on Saturdays on the radio show, when he got that job at Nebraska, it was just like when Jim Harbaugh got the job at Michigan. I said Jim Harbaugh, perfect fit. Played at Michigan, played for Bo Schembechler, had a good career in the NFL. Scott Frost won at UCF, where everybody's won games at. Played at Nebraska, national. It just played for Tom Osborne. I thought it was the best fit. So all these things, when people say Michigan needs a Michigan guy or Nebraska, Scott Frost, throw it out the window. If you can keep it within the program and it works out, great. But if it doesn't, and you got to go outside the program, in Michigan's case, to beat Ohio State, to beat Penn State, as a Michigan fan and alum, I'm sure we would rather take those wins versus, a Michigan alum and lose games. So I'm with you guys on all of them. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, Clay Helton got a win. I really like Chip Kelly. He's got a quarterback this year, which makes all the difference in the world. And he's got some pretty good skill players too. Surprise teams to watch out for, guys. I got a bunch. I'll give you one of mine out of the gate, and then I'll give you the rest. I'm going with Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin out of the SEC. Give me Lane Kiffin any day of the week. The guy's a winner everywhere he's been, but he's got a quarterback in Matt Corral who might be the best quarterback in college football. I think the SEC, look out, because I think they're going to score a lot of points. Defensively, they're a lot better. I think they can win a lot of games in the SEC.
Yeah, I would have to piggyback off that one, but mine, I'm going to go with Florida. They got that pretty good quarterback that's a dual threat, and he can run the ball, sling the ball. And with his offense down there, his scheme, Mullen is a very good offensive guy, and I think they got the defense, and I think they're going to sneak up on some people in the SEC.
Medicis, who you got?
I had 2 teams. I had Ole Miss down. I think they beat up on Louisville is hit or miss every year. They either look good or they look terrible. And, I mean, they beat up on them pretty good. But if there's one team that gives Alabama trouble, it was Ole Miss last year. Yep. And Ole Miss scored points. So if they can figure that out on the defensive end, not that anyone looks like they can even come close to challenging Alabama after that first week. And then my other team was UCLA. I think Clay Helton, he's starting to feel the pressure with USC. Oregon seems like every year they have high expectations and lose a game that they shouldn't, and they almost lost in week 1 against Fresno. But I think UCLA, Chip Kelly is starting to put it together. They look good. And again, there's no one that really stands out in that Pac-12. So if there's a time to come through, now would be the time.
No Chanticleers, Nick? Come on.
I know, right? I'm shocked. I was ready for it.
No, I was ready for it. They had a big win. I'm like, here he goes.
It's got to be somewhere. And those notes in front of him, it's got to be somewhere in front of him. P, what do you got?
Guys, it's got to the point where Coastal Carolina wins like that are expected. So let's relax. It's not a surprise anymore.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't say them. Well, I mean, I had 4 of them written down. Mississippi, which we talked about, but they have to figure out the defensive end. They're going to score 40, 50 points a game, but they give up 60. So who knows? Chip Kelly and UCLA is another one. I wouldn't never count out Chip Kelly. The two that I think are kind of surprised. One being Penn State. I know they struggled in Wisconsin, but that's a tough place to play week 1. I mean, we all talked about the crowd and that earlier. I mean, that was a tough one. New offensive coordinator, so again, expected that struggle. But the defense held up. I mean, defense. I have one of the things we learned during the week was after week 1 was defense. I mean, there was a lot of good defense being played across the country. And then the other one, which I don't really think is a surprise, and I know you guys talked about him, was Iowa State, not Ohio State.
Big surprise.
Iowa State.
Nick, who you got?
Yeah, so I think everybody clipped mine. I had Penn State. I think that I think it might be a year early. I'm not a Sean Clifford fan, and so I do think that he's probably potentially going to cost them a game or two. But boy, they got some linebackers that can play. Their defense is coming, and if you look what Franklin's doing on the recruiting trail, they're not going away. They're coming for sure. Definitely on Ole Miss. The other team I would throw in there, I think, is Iowa. Right, I want to see obviously what they do this week, but this is kind of the typical cadence for Iowa. Every 4 to 5 years, they kind of come out of left field. They play an amazing season, typically start off strong, then try to hang on towards the latter half of the year. So they're a team I have my eye on. I liked what they did. They dominated up front against Indiana, absolutely owned Penix, just made him uncomfortable from opening kick to the when the game was over. So Iowa is definitely a team playing strong defense. Can they score enough points? But in that Big Ten side of the bracket, they don't got to do too much to find their way in the championship game.
I got to give you the Corso pen and point here. I'm going to throw a team at you guys. You guys are going to laugh when I say it. Nevada Wolfpack out of the WAC. Nevada.
They win one game and now they're a surprise.
Listen, Carson Strong, remember the name, quarterback, threw for 3,000 yards last year, 28 touchdown passes. I think they're going to be really good out of the WAC. And then I had Cincinnati. I know it's not really a surprise, but they're going to be challenged early. I know Indiana had the loss, but preseason Indiana was 17th. They're going to play Notre Dame, so that'll be a big game. And, of course, I gave you guys Wake Forest. I got them going 10-2 in the ACC, so we'll see. But all good things. Surprise teams, okay, we just did that one. Top 5 teams after week 1. Who you guys got? P, who do you got?
I think right now, I mean, it's not so much who the top 5 are, but I think it's whoever falls behind them. I mean, you got Alabama leading the pack. Georgia really surprised me. I didn't think it's not a fact that they won, but they held Clemson 180 yards of offense. Ohio State, Oklahoma, who I absolutely love, and we'll talk about them at the end. So get your pens ready. And then Cincinnati I have as rounding out the top 5.
Okay.
Ooh,
Nick, who you got from CBUS?
Yeah, Nick, I got Bama 1. I mean, they looked great, and let's nobody's going to say that, but let's pump the brakes. It was Miami, not to say that they don't have athletes, but Saban and openers, you give him an extra couple weeks to prepare, good luck, right? I have Georgia 2. I thought front four with Georgia was just dominant, was a blast to watch. I don't think they're going to be able to score enough points. Typically, Georgia's problem. I think Daniels is a really good quarterback. I don't dislike him there. Just don't see a ton of athletes on the outside that really scare me. I have Oklahoma 3. I'm with you, Pat. I just think Oklahoma, I think their defense is going to continue to get better. And if they do, Lincoln Riley is one of the brightest offensive minds for me in the country. I'm not saying anything that we probably all don't agree with there. So I see Oklahoma really being strong. Of Ohio State 4, I think, prove it game this week against Oregon. Tough battle test against Minnesota, another senior-laden team that they had to go up against, breaking in a quarterback. I'll talk a little bit more about them, I'm sure, as the game goes on. And then I got A&M 5th. I like what I see there. I think Jimbo Fisher could definitely recruit another team that I think, they got to prove it against Bama, and they got to prove it in that schedule. But boy, do they got a lot of people returning, and explosion a lot of places. They're just breaking in a new quarterback, which isn't necessarily any different than any other teams I mentioned outside of Oklahoma.
Jake, who you got?
Obviously, Alabama, number 1. It's pretty impressive with Alabama that, you can lose a quarterback, coordinators, receivers, linemen, all, their first round picks in the NFL draft, and other assistant coaches move on, and they still reload, and they just look so much better than everyone else on the field. Even with that Miami team, they had that senior or that quarterback King. That's a pretty impressive guy, and they held him in check pretty well. Yep. 2, obviously Georgia. They did a great job of shutting down Clemson. But like CBUS said, their offense is still out there. I'm interested to see how it goes. I'm gonna go Oklahoma number 3, Ohio State 2, and then I'm gonna throw Notre Dame up there. I thought they looked impressive. I think they could have blown that game away, but they kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. I think they kind of got content, a big lead, and allowed that momentum come back. But early on in the game, they were rolling.
No quarterback. Jack Cohn is not. We've all watched Big Ten play. There's no way that kid makes it a whole season under Brian Kelly. He's going to yoke him. He's going to yoke him on the sideline by week 3. No way.
You know what, though? I'm with Jake, though, on this, and I know it's only one game. Florida State might not be the Florida State of old, but they still have athletes. I think Cohn in the new system, and we don't know how it's going to play out. It's just one game.
Well, sure.
But he's in a brand new system that I think fits what he can do. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the quarterbacks, they get exposed. But I thought he looked pretty good that first game against Florida State.
Best
Jake,
I've ever seen him play.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly wants to execute them all, though, remember.
That's right.
I know.
Right.
I know.
Oops. Bad joke.
Jake, who was your 5th?
That was Notre Dame.
Notre Dame was. Okay.
Yeah.
Medicis, who you got?
I got
Coastal
Bama
Carolina.
1.
Oh.
I got Bama 1. It's not even close.
2.
Despite what Nick said, I think the Bama win was just so impressive. And what Jake said, we're talking about just a new quarterback, a new running back, new receivers, new coordinators, and it just keeps on rolling. And that Miami team was supposed to be much improved from before. So I thought Bama was 1, Georgia 2. The offense does scare me with Georgia. We know the defense can play, but can they score with Bama? Can they score with Ole Miss? Can they score with Texas A&M? Number 3, I had Ohio State. I thought that was a nice win over a decent Minnesota team, an improving Minnesota team. At number 4, I had Texas A&M, which is my 3rd SEC team that I've given so far in the top 4. And then number 5 was Cincinnati. And I know everybody's going to say, where is Oklahoma? I was not impressed at all with Oklahoma. I thought Spencer Rattler has these high Heisman expectations. I mean, we're talking about Tulane here. We're not talking about Texas in the rivalry game. We're not talking about a tough opening game like, Notre Dame played Florida State. Clemson played Georgia. Oklahoma struggled with Tulane, and if it wasn't for a late interception, Tulane could have won that game. Mm-hmm. So I have Oklahoma outside of the top 5 as well as Clemson.
All right, I got Alabama number one. No surprise there. When we mentioned the coaches, Lane Kiffin was there, Steve Sarkisian was there. Now comes Bill O'Brien, another offensive coordinator, and you got a new line coach. They bring in all these new coaches. But isn't it nice when you have the athletes that you can call a play and they can execute it? They're just better athletes. And Bryce Young's already a millionaire, and he played one game for Alabama with the endorsements. Number two, I got Georgia. I still think Georgia's going to be there in the end. I know offense wins games, defense wins championship. They still got a lot of talent. I think they'll be able to get by, 3-4 games just by their defense, and hopefully hopefully they get better offensively. I got the Buckeyes, Nick, at 3, even though I know people say Stroud, the freshman, didn't play that well the first half. He's only going to get better. And when you got Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave on the outside, here's the thing I don't understand about Ohio State. And maybe it's just offensively, they're just better skilled-wise than a lot of teams. Jake, you and Pat are football guys. How the hell do they run wide open in the middle of the field on all these damn crossing routes? These guys are wide open. I don't get it. But I think Stroud's going to be good. I think he's going to have time to develop. They got games coming up, Nick, over the next 2 to 3 weeks where I think he'll get better. Defensively, still the question for me. Can the back end hold up against somebody that can throw the ball and some athletes? But we'll see. I still got him at 3. I got A&M at 4. I think Jimbo Fisher, this is going to be the year again, coming off of the year last year where they went 10-1, who many thought last year, including me, deserved a shot in the playoff last year. And number 5, I know you guys talked about it. I still got Oklahoma there. I know they didn't play well week 1, but there's a lot of teams that didn't look good in week 1. Lincoln Riley, my trust is 100%. They're going to score a lot of points, and I still think that defense will get better as the year goes on. And Jake, I got to ask you, Clemson dropped out of the top 5. Is there room to panic? All week I hear on ESPN. Is Clemson starting to go the other way? Did they hit their peak and now they're deteriorating? What do you think? People overreacting?
Yeah, I think they're overreacting a little bit. Watching the game, I was a little disappointed in how DJ, he had some running lanes where like Trevor Lawrence would have took off and took that, 3rd and 8, and they have crossed the routes going across, and there was a wide open gap, but he decided to hold on to it instead of like Trevor Lawrence would have snuck out, got his 15, got down. And I know DJ is not the best of runner, but he can still move. He's 6'4", 6'5" kid that's going to be pretty hard to tackle. And, I think they were trying to force DJ into Trevor Lawrence's offense almost a little bit. And I don't think he's there what Trevor was. And so I was going to be interested if how Coach Scott, the offensive coordinator, comes back and, tries to – they supposedly reading stuff. They're tailing stuff around, changing stuff around to try to fit the quarterback better and trying to get more of the run game. I give credit to Georgia's up front. They were getting to the quarterback very easy, and Clemson has returning guys from the offensive line. It's not like they're brand new guys out there. But I think they'll get a turnaround. I mean, that's a hard game 1, 3 versus 5. That's a hard game to start off with.
Do you guys think, and because I looked at watched the North Carolina game with Sam Howell, the preseason Heisman talk with him, some of these quarterbacks, struggled in week 1. Do you think as coaches, they overcoach it saying, we got to get the big play, man. I got to get him. I know everybody wants to win, but you also want your players to, if they got a shot to win awards down at the end of the season, you hope some of your guys are there. Do some of these coaches overcoach and worry about stats too much?
Well, just like JT Daniels said, he goes, they practiced all week and they were ready for man, and Clemson came out and ran more zone. I mean, week 0, those guys don't have scrimmage film from someone else. They're going off of what teams that they've done in the past. So week 1, your quarterback's kind of out there feeling it. Oh, are they coming out man zone? Are they switching up? Maybe they, change their analytics and, the defensive coordinator says, hey, I'm going to flip it around and do something different. So I think it's very hard for especially a quarterback coming in and seeing that, especially a big time game like that. So,
yeah, I think I
can see DJ getting better throughout the year.
I mean, speed of the game too, Rock. I mean, we're talking about Lawrence and Clemson. We're talking about Fields at Ohio State. These guys didn't see the field a ton, right? That's the other thing. You trying to cut your teeth in against a big time opponent like Georgia is an awful tough task. The thing that stood out to me with Clemson was I felt like their game plan was atrocious offensively. I think you got to get some short throws off to get your quarterback into a rhythm. You want to protect him. You got to try to run the ball a little bit. It was astounding to me. Jake, I read the same thing probably you did today. Hey, we're going to start to tailor the offense a little bit to meet or it was like, well, isn't that what spring and fall camp was all about? Wasn't that what you were doing all spring and all fall, was to find out what the strengths of your quarterback was and building an offense to suit them? So I felt like that was an exposure. I almost put that loss more on the coaching staff than maybe I do the players, especially week one. It's so much preparation. These coaches, they have weeks upon weeks and film upon film to watch. So that to me stood out very much so in the Clemson Georgia game. Was the shock for me. It just seemed like Clemson offensively especially was very much unprepared for what they saw.
Well, I think some of your coaches panicked a little bit too when you start getting in a game and it's 0-0 after one and you're supposed to score 40 points a game, and then it gets to be halftime and maybe it's 7-7. I mean, that Georgia Clemson game, I don't know, I got the feeling a little bit that Clemson was panicking a little as far as being conservative. I mean, they only had 2 yards rushing the entire game, 180 overall. So something wasn't jiving there. And then the other game I watched was the Penn State Wisconsin. That was similar. It was 0-0. It was a war the entire game, and I think it was. I think Franklin came out and it was kind of, don't lose the game for us. Let's just do enough to win, and that's they pulled it out with defense.
But going back to the Clemson thing, don't we have this conversation every year where some starting quarterback gets hurt, some backup comes in, looks good for a game, everybody calls for the backup, and then a year later when the backup is the starter, it's completely different. I mean, in Syracuse, we saw that with the Dungy DeVito thing. We talked about it last year with Lawrence. And how will his return be? Well, DJ did some good things, but nobody had tape on him. All he had to do was just come in and throw the ball. And now he's got to run an offense. He's got to make checks. Everything was dummied way, way down. And now he's a starting quarterback, and he's expected to lead a team to victory against a top 5 team. He's going to be good. We all know that. But I think the expectations of Clemson was that he's going to be the same thing that Trevor Lawrence was. And they almost got false hope last year when he came in and he threw the ball all over the place. They thought he was just going to come in. It was just going to be easy. And no, he's a freshman. He's had 2 career starts. He's going to go through growing pains. He's going to have to play through them. And you know what? At the end of the year, they'll probably be right where they want to be.
Well, I think that's what the Clemson, like I said, I thought they played a little conservative, but I think it was that reason. I mean, to lose, look at the big picture. To lose to a Georgia team that's probably got 3 or 4 guys on the front line that's going to play on Sundays, and lose by 1 bomb, that wasn't.
Can I give it my Lee Corso?
It was a pick 6. It wasn't even a bomb.
Can I just say this? Do you guys remember who was in the backfield for Clemson?
It was Travis Etienne.
They didn't have no feature back. There was no creativity. There was no threat in the backfield of a run game at all. So it was just, let's get in the shotgun, let's drop back and throw the ball. I mean, DJ has the big arm. The pick 6. Dabo said that Justin Ross ran the wrong route. It wasn't even on the quarterback, but it makes a big difference when you don't have ETN in the backfield. And I don't really know who their true back is. So if you're one-dimensional, it really hurts you.
Well, they're still trying to figure out the back too.
Yeah, I think they're figuring out. I think the Shipley kid's going to win. But even last year when DJ came in, he started off slow in both games. And then I think everyone in Clemson were waiting, okay, he's starting off slow. Remember how it ended at the Notre Dame? He got on fire the second half. He was throwing bombs. So I think even me, I was sitting in watching going, all right, second half. He's a second half guy. He's going to pick it up. But he never did, where he did the last 2 games. Hey, that second half, he threw lights out against Boston College and, Notre Dame. And I was like, okay, but that never happened.
You guys, we talked about it a lot of the games already, but from this past week and a lot of big games coming up this weekend too. What are some things we learned from last week? Let's start. Yeah, go ahead, Nick. No, go ahead.
No, I think we touched on some of it. I think we talked about upsets early. right? I think, some of these senior laden teams, Montana, Iowa, Penn State, I thought were all examples of really some things that we learned. I think the thing I would call out is injury bug early in the Big Ten. Ibrahim going down for Minnesota, terrible loss. Phenomenal running back, put on an absolute show in 3 quarters against Ohio State. Made his name out there, and you hate to see him go down for the year. Ronnie Bell out of Michigan, Rock, we talked about this before the show. I think it's a huge loss. The depth at Michigan is not there, and you take away their best deep threat. So I thought injuries were a big thing. And then my other kind of takeaway is, let's all deep breath and remember it's week 1, right? Like, we all come in jazzed up into the season, and I'm guilty of it as everybody else. But we also know this is a marathon, definitely not a sprint. And so some of these little blips that we saw, we're picking on Oklahoma, picking on Clemson, these things could be afterthoughts here when we circle back here in a couple weeks after we see some more football. So I think the other thing I had to take away was like, hey, 1 week, exciting week, but man, do we know that what we saw week 1, none of these teams look the same come week 11 and 12.
Medicis, how about you?
I think we got to slow the talk of North Carolina and Indiana being football schools. They're basketball schools. They're not football schools. And how about Kansas rushing the field after beating South Dakota? How about that?
Well, they haven't won a game in 10 years?
I was going to say,
what are you thinking?
Like, here, let me ask you guys this, and then you can get back to your storylines, Nick. Is Kansas is probably, other than UConn, are they the 2 worst jobs in America?
Yes, and it's not even close. UConn number 1, Kansas number 2. UConn has no conference, and they still can't win. At least Kansas is in Power 5. UConn can't even win, and who knows what conference they're going to be in next, because they're just bouncing around left and right. They want to get out. They want to form the Big East back again, and UConn's bad. Randy Edsall just resigned, I think, yesterday or today, so it's just a mess.
Nick, don't throw the towel in on North Carolina. They got a long season to go. I think that was a good wake-up call, as Mac Brown said. They got athletes, and they got a quarterback. That's what you need in college football. So don't throw the towel. Indiana, I get.
And I'm not saying they're a bad team, but everybody made it out that North Carolina is going to challenge Clemson. North Carolina is so good. Indiana, did you see the resurgence of the football program in Indiana? They're really good.
Jeez, I got to mute you.
Both these teams, no. I'm sorry. No.
I don't disagree with the Indiana piece. Indiana had a good year last year. They had the shot, Nick, to beat Ohio State last year, and they come out and they lay egg in the first game. I completely get that. The North Carolina piece, they have too many athletes to struggle. They have too many.
And Medicis, I hear you. I just think it's such a long road to go from basketball to school to football school, right? It's just not. We do want to crown people early. And it's a long haul, to get reoccurring classes and to really build a solid foundation. And you got to keep coaches, and there is so much that goes into that from a culture building and perspective. Rock, you're not throwing the towel in on North Carolina, and I'll be honest, I'm not sure I'm ready to throw the towel in on Indiana this year. As bad as they looked, I know if Michael Penix is healthy, I know what type of player that kid is if he's healthy. And Tom Allen, we were all crowning him last year, saying what a great coach he was. So I'm not necessarily ready to concur, but it's a different conversation of saying that they're football schools.
Well, I'm not there yet, and I'm not saying they're bad teams.
You're just saying they're not there for a football program.
The hype all after the season is are they a football school now? They're really turning it around. Let's take a step back. North Carolina has to win games like that against Virginia Tech, a bowl game against Texas A&M. You have to win games like that to be put into that top 10 discussion. And I just don't think they're there yet.
Yep, I agree.
But also think about this. We finally have fans this year to go play in Blacksburg on your opening game. Maybe Virginia Tech's not as bad as people think. Same in the Big Ten. I would love for Iowa to be good this year, to have a chance to beat Ohio States and Penn States and Wisconsin's and the good teams. Maybe those teams aren't as bad as we think they're going to be this year.
Yeah, but even, Nick, going to your thing, North Carolina is in the top 25 in recruiting year after year now.
Yep.
So, I mean, they're on the uprise. I know they're not quite a football school, but, I mean, the light's pretty bright for them. And
he's a basketball coach over there. Of course he's going to say that.
There's a lot of teams that are top 25 recruiting classes that doesn't win you games. I mean, you look at Florida State. Florida State recruits well every year. You know, they have athletes in Florida. That doesn't mean anything. You still have to win games. And
let me put it this way. Your team, Syracuse, when's the last time they were in the top 50 in recruiting?
And they haven't won.
Look at the difference. They haven't won, you know, where North Carolina is.
You got to have the players first. I agree with you, Coach. You got to have the players there. It definitely starts in recruiting, but it's definitely not to go from a basketball school to a football school.
Oh, yeah.
Just recruiting is not the only thing. But I totally agree. North Carolina is head and shoulders above where Indiana is from a football program and trying to build there. But North Carolina, this is not the first time they've had expectations. You know, Butch Davis was there. They had some expectations, and they fell on their face. You know, this is not uncharted territory. So there is a little bit of a prove it to me, you know, from a Tar Heel perspective. And Rock, I know you're a Mac Brown homer and a fan, so I know that's hard for you as well. But until I see it consistently, I'm not sold by any means.
And that's the big thing you said is consistently. It can't just be a 1-year thing. It's got to be on a consistent basis.
Just got to stack teams.
I hate to say it, but I think North Carolina may need a change to put them over that hump.
Jesus, Mac Brown is bringing in the best recruiting classes. They lose one game and you want to get rid of them?
But they all, like Nick said, though, they have high expectations every year.
Are you guys kidding
never
me
come
or
through.
what?
Never come through.
They beat Texas A&M in a friggin' bowl game last year.
No, but half A&M team didn't even play
into the playoffs.
Oh, half their team didn't even play.
I don't believe it. I should mute all you guys. So, Jake, what do you got for some storylines?
Yeah, my thought, watching week 1 and getting these type of games, I want to see that more. And that's why I think if they keep going to that 12-team playoff, you know, because I would hate to see, you know, I know Clemson's my team, but if they they're out of the playoffs because they played Georgia week 1 and they were like the 5th team or 6th team sitting right there, and that was their only hiccup, how are we going to punish a team for going out playing someone like that? So I think that would just show that, hey, let's expand the playoffs so teams are not afraid to, hey, go out and play another great school to get better at that and to show great games on TV instead of, oh, well, we lost that. Or you look up, you know, a team, they lost week 1 and didn't get in and they were 5th because they got held for that and got punished for that. I hate to see that. And, you know, even like last year, Texas A&M had the one hiccup where, you know, I think that just shows you how much closer the gaps are getting with all these teams and everything. So I think we need to expand the playoff.
College football got it right. This was probably one of the best opening weeks matchups that we've had in a long time. I think it's setting us up for, if these alliances, if they create, you're going to see a lot more of these big games week in and week out. I would rather see these big games all year than, you know, maybe 1 or 2 throughout the season. But for me, this past week, guys, the Mackenzie Milton story, coming in and played a snap in 3 years. Many people thought he was going to lose a leg, never stepped foot on the field. Not only did he come in, but he came in and almost led Florida State back to beat Notre Dame. And I think the other thing, Pat mentioned it earlier for me, was the Penn State win against Wisconsin in that environment, week 1 of the season. Here's a key stat. That was James Franklin's first win on the road against a top 15 team, not just at Penn State, in his career. So imagine that, all the games and all the success he's had, that's the first win he's had against a top 15 team. And then I think for me, Alabama with Bryce Young, they're not going to lose a beat all season offensively. They're going to be as good as, if not better, than what they were last year. And with that,
Rock, better,
yeah, or better than what they were last year.
No way, Rock. They played one game. Don't get me wrong, Bryce Young looks great, but can we pump the brakes? You know, Medicis talking about not crowning, you know, basketball schools. Let's not crown a team week 1. And don't get me wrong, it's Bama and it's Nick Saban, and I'm not going to sit here and say they're not the best football program in college football. But We have not seen them go. We talked about Ole Miss and scoring points against them. Can they get in a shootout? Can they win? We haven't seen the kid get hit. We haven't seen the team deal with Miami was absolutely outclassed up front. There is a ton that Alabama has to go through before you're going to throw Bryce Young above Mac Jones.
Here's the key with Alabama. It's not Bryce Young. Defensively this year, they're going to be better than what they've been in the past. That's what scares me about Alabama.
Totally agree. But I don't know if offensively you're going to see the numbers in which they put up last year. I mean, they lost talent. And don't get me wrong, they're going to reload, but that takes time. You don't just pick up the baton.
Well, Nick, you remember in the beginning of the year, they were playing shootouts. And then Saban came out and said, I don't know about defense. Doesn't really matter. You just score more points. Yep. And then since he said that, the defense turned around and was much improved.
Yep.
So now you have a defense that's a lot, I guess you could say, better than last year. It's going to make the offense look even better than it really is. Injury bug
already bit them too, right? Linebacker, they have the best linebacker go down for the next 3 weeks, leg injury. So they got a brutal stretch, guys. They got three games in 4 weeks that they got to go against ranked opponents. They got Florida, they have A&M, they got LSU. It's all bunched in there, right? We're gonna know by mid-October if where they're at and what ascension they're on, because they're gonna go through the column.
And let me just throw this.
I was just gonna say they're at Florida and at A&M.
Absolutely, they got a tough draw.
Let me ask this question though. When you look at Alabama, they had Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, two different types of offenses, similar in ways. And now you insert Bill O'Brien, who I think out of Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian, I think Bill O'Brien's offense is completely different than what Lane Kiffin ran and what Steve Sarkisian ran. So that might play into have some impact this year in Alabama too. I know he's an NFL guy, but it's a lot different than what those other two guys ran.
I agree.
Just throwing that one out.
It's fair. It's gonna be a little more pro style, a little more pro set. I think you're probably right if he falls into how he likes to play.
I remember last year at the start of Alabama, they were talking about Bryce Young beating out Jones possibly. They were already high on him and the competition and everything, and I guess they just all right, we're gonna give it to the upperclassmen. But he was right there competing with them, and a lot of people said they were surprised that they chose Jones over him.
You guys, I want to just talk for a few minutes, then we'll get into, is it pardon shots, Nick, or parting shots?
Parting
shots. Okay, parting shots. Nick had to give me the education I did from PTI, pardon shots. But I got it. I want to ask, so Oregon, Ohio State, I got to at least bring up Ohio State here because I know you give me the business. What are you looking forward to the most in that game for the Buckeyes?
I am looking forward to do the linebackers at Ohio State show up? Can they cover in space and can they tackle in space? Offensively with Ohio State, we could talk about CJ Stroud all we want, and he's going to have some growing pains, which I fully expect. But offensively, they're loaded. They have 2 first-round picks in Olave and Wilson. They have running backs. They have Mayan Williams. They have Trevon Henderson, freshman, who is going to be a next stud, barring health. But defensively, their back seven and specifically the linebacking core has been a huge problem now over the last couple years. Kerry Combs came in to run the defense. They had Jeff Hafley for a year before he went to BC, and he really turned that defense around. They brought in Kerry Combs back from the NFL. And never been a coordinator in his life, right? Has always been a DB coach. And I'm not so sure that he knows how to run a defense, particularly well. And the linebacking core is non-existent. Now, they flashed a little bit against Minnesota in the second half. They were going up against a mammoth offensive line. But Oregon has athletes in space. So this will be a great test for Ohio State's defense, especially that back seven. Can they tackle? Can they play well? I expect Ohio State to score points. I think Oregon's defense is definitely a little soft in what we probably saw against Fresno State. I think we're probably going to see, similar there. Ohio State's going to be able to get after them a little bit. But Ohio State's defense comes and goes, as it's been the last couple of years. How was that defensive line play? And they'll be fine. But they got exposed last year and the year before without good linebacker play, and that cannot continue if they want to make a run at some of the big boys.
Well, and I think Oregon's playing. I don't know. I think he's questionable, right? The defensive end that's a first-team All-American.
He'll play.
Kayvon Thibodeau, he's day to day, but I mean, he's projected #1 draft. I mean, he's a stud.
Yeah, he's a player. Changer. And Ohio State's front five, guys, their offensive line, it might be the best offensive line they've had in the last 15 or 20 years, which is saying a ton. They are playing, they moved their starting left tackle to guard this year just to make room for another stud to come in and play tackle. They are big and strong and fast up front. I'm a little worried about the size they have up front, to be honest. My football coach is here on the line. I'm worried if they can get low enough to move the line of scrimmage because they are so big, 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". But, jury's still out, but I thought they played well against Minnesota. But, yeah, absolutely. Oregon's going to have some pressure on defense. But, Ohio State on the defensive side of ball is what I got to see to give me some hope.
Who do you guys like in that game? P, who you got? Who do you like?
I like Ohio State. I don't know. They're going to be way too much for Oregon, regardless.
CBUS, who you got? The Buckeyes?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Ohio State, but I'm gonna go closer than people think. I'm gonna go 41-35.
Okay. Medicis, how about you?
I think a lot depends on if Thibodeau plays, because I think he can at least disrupt and make Ohio State work for everything they got. And if you can pressure the quarterback as a young quarterback, we'll see what happens when he gets hit a bunch. But I think Ohio State wins, but I think this game, especially if he plays, is a lot closer than people will think.
Jake, how about you?
Going with the upset. Oregon's going to cover the receivers. So there's going to be no wide open receivers downfield. That's what they've been practicing.
It's a tough line for that game, though. Yeah. That right now it's 14.5 and 63.5.
Ohio State's giving them 14.5.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. How is that a noon game?
I could see Oregon covering.
Don't get me started, Rock.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to get you started because now Michigan-Washington really has no Washington got beat to a 1-AA
No juice
score,
on that one, right?
No. But here's what I think about that game. I think Ohio State wins, even if the kid from Oregon plays. Joe Moorhead, a Fordham grad, knows Ohio State well. I think they're going to score points. I think what's going to be interesting is Stroud in that first game playing at Minnesota is a lot different than playing in front of 100,000 people at Ohio State. So I think it's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be up-tempo, high-scoring. P, I don't know what the over-under is, but I can see
63.5.
I can see it in the 30s, 40s. I think they're both going to score points.
Take the over.
All right, guys. Last one. We're just going to do a pick on the Michigan-Washington game, and then my favorite part of the show, we'll do the pardon shots at the end. P, who you got? Michigan-Washington, the primetime game.
I'm going to pick the upset. Go Washington.
Upset? Michigan's the upset pick.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. He's knocking stuff off his desk. Here we go.
Oh, I just almost knocked my camera off. My office phone went flying. How about you, Medicis? Let's go to you now. Who do you think?
Well, I think that Washington loses really hurts Michigan because if Washington comes back and plays how everyone thought they were going to play, it's a close game, it's a loss for Michigan.
Yeah, I agree.
Anything they do, it's not going to look impressive. I think Michigan wins, and I think Michigan needs a statement win where they come out and they beat up on somebody on prime time, and I think now's the time. I think Michigan wins by at least 2 touchdowns.
Oh, okay. Jake, how about you?
I'm gonna go Michigan. I know they lost their big guy on offense, but I still, be interested to see how well the quarterback does. He had a pretty good game last game, so with the spring and everything, it's interesting. Is he finally Harbaugh's guy as a quarterback? Obviously we see the other kid down in Tennessee helping them out down there, the one that got ran out.
Joe Milton.
Yeah, but I'm gonna take Michigan.
All right, C-Bus, who you got?
Who'd Washington lose to?
Montana.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm taking Michigan here. Because heaven help you, Rock, if Michigan loses to Washington. But I think too much. I think really just too physical for Washington. I think typically when I see these Big Ten schools play these Pac-12 schools, right, it's typically over the course of 4 quarters. They just wear them down. That speed looks great. Pac-12 speed looks great until they get to midway through the third quarter, and they're just sick and tired of getting leaned on by these big uglies up front. So I'm gonna take Michigan. I'm gonna take Michigan by 10. I think the first half might be close, but I think Michigan pulls away. Maybe a special team score in there to help separate it.
It's a no-win for Jim Harbaugh, because if they beat them, they're going to say, well, they lost to Montana. If Washington hammered Montana last week, people would be picking Washington to beat Michigan. It would be a big win. So it's a no-win for Jim Harbaugh, no matter how you slice it. I think for me, what I liked about Michigan in week one, I know it was Western Michigan. Western Michigan is picked to win the MAC. They returned a lot of players. Michigan ran the football. They found a way to run the ball. Cade McNamara looked good. I still think at some point in time this season, if he struggles, J.J. McCarthy to back up. I'm thinking of hoops, Medicis, Starling. I think J.J. comes in, and I think it's his job to lose if Cade struggles. But I really like the run game. I think Michigan hammers them, guys. I think it's like 36 to something or 42. I think they're going to score a lot of points, because I think they're going to mix things up like they did in week one. So I think it'll be a good win for him and start off 2-0 before they get into some tough games. My favorite part of the show, guys, we're at an hour. So we're going to go to my favorite part of the show. You know what it is. So anybody want to go first? Or you guys want me to surprise you? I'm going to surprise you guys. All right, so let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch it, you're by his toe. Let's see who we go to. Medicis.
All right. As a high school coach, I'm always wondering, how could a high school coach do at the college level, at the D1 level? Well, we don't have to worry anymore, because our buddy Kevin Kelly, a.k.a. the coach who never punts, is at Presbyterian, an FCS school in South Carolina. This past week, they won his first game 84-43. The quarterback, Ren Helfin, was a former walk-on at Michigan, went 38 of 50, threw for 538 yards and 10 touchdowns as Presbyterian beat St. Andrews 84-43. Presbyterian is playing an NAIA team this week, the University of Fort Lauderdale, which should be another fun game to watch. So Kevin Kelly, the coach who never punts, 9 state championships at Arkansas, got hired at FCS Presbyterian. Now we got a high school guy coaching at the college level, doing things a little nutty, not punting, onside kicks, goes for every fourth down. I'm interested to see how it works out.
Good one, Nick. I like that. I forgot that's where he was at. I forgot all about that. Jeepers. Right,
84 points.
It was 56-29 at the half.
Yeah.
Who needs a punt?
Right.
All right, let's go. P, what do you got?
All right. Like I said, I'm going to give you guys a bunch of winners this weekend. Get your
Hold
pens
on.
ready.
I got to write them down. Hold on.
All right. Hold on.
Ahead. Who you got?
All right. I have Utah -6.5. University of Miami -7. Florida Atlantic under 48. Kentucky -5. Illinois +11. Miami of Ohio under 54. And of course, Iowa State -4.
What was the Miami, Ohio one? Under 54. Miami, Ohio, you said it was under 54?
Under 54.
And then what's that last one you just said?
Iowa State -4 against Iowa.
Iowa State -4.
I should throw on Washington +7 against Michigan.
Okay.
And I got some futures too, though. So
all right, what do you got?
We talked about them the entire show. Oklahoma over 10.5 wins and to win the national title. And I also have Iowa State over 9.5 wins. And one of the surprises, which somebody mentioned something about it earlier, I have Miami of Florida under 9.5 wins for the year.
All right, the Piznat, bring in the gambling lines. I like that, Pete. I like it. All right, let's see here. Let's go to Jake. What do you got, Coach?
Yeah, after watching week one, I think I would like, and hopefully, who knows, I would like to see the rule change of the targeting rule. You watch so many football games, and it's a kid accidentally put down his head, hit someone, not intent on what that rule was for. So I would like to see, college football go with like a basketball, like a flagrant 1 or a flagrant 2, that if it wasn't intentional, like going upwards to try to take the guy out, that could be a flagrant 2. Okay, you're injected. But how fast the game goes, how fast those guys playing big and strong, it's almost a split second. And, guys know that played football. Sometimes I know we want to keep the head out of the game, but sometimes it's just the angle and that running back or quarterback lowers his head and it's a headshot towards his ear. And you just hate to see like the starting middle linebackers, outside guys that's, even that Ole Miss game, I think there was 4 or 5 ejections just for targeting, and none of them were a malicious hit, like coming upwards towards them, trying to knock someone out. It was just a tackle and a split second, his head just dipped down and replay called down, said you need to take a look at it. It wasn't even looked seriously on the field that the officials called. So I would like to see them to change that rule and go to even a 1 and a 2.
No, I like that. Let me see if I can put myself on here. All right, so I told you guys beginning of the show, I think it's the year for the FCS schools. You had Montana, we talked about, beat Washington. Eastern Tennessee State beat Vandy. Holy Cross beat UConn. I know UConn's bad, but it's still a big win for a 1AA school. UC Davis beat Tulsa, who Tulsa's always known for scoring a lot of points. South Dakota State hammered Colorado State, and Eastern Washington beat UNLV, and Northern Iowa was really, really close against Iowa State, and so was Missouri this past weekend, coached by Bobby Petrino. And I got to give a shout-out to Ryan Greenhagen of Fordham. 31 tackles in one game against Nebraska, set an all-time Division I record for the most tackles in Division I history. He's a first-team All-American, and I think this is the year because a lot of these FCS schools didn't get a chance to play in the spring. So I think there's a lot of good FCS teams this year. I think you're going to see more of these FCS teams beat these FBS teams. There's a lot of good talent in Division I AA. So hats off for those schools. And Fordham made $500,000 for going down to play Nebraska. It was close for about a half. And then Fordham, the wheels came off a little bit, but they made $500,000 for going down there. So hats off for not only making the money, but actually going down and competing against some of the big boys. So that's my take for today, guys. Guys, this is fun. We can talk for hours and hours, but I thought it was a good opening segment.
Don't I get a parting shot?
Oh, I forgot you, buddy. Hold on.
Holy cow.
Hey, I was going to forget you.
My goodness.
Usually I'm at the end.
I know. I got a little worried. I thought you were just mixing it up on me.
What do you got?
So Coach Dercola had a great one. I was all over the targeting rule, but I'm gonna let him keep that one. I want to talk a little bit about the name, image, and likeness, piece. I heard all summer how this is gonna ruin college football, and here we go. How dare we let these kids make money for off the backs or get a scholarship? This is ridiculous. We have stories of Bryce Young making $1 million. Quinn Ewers leaves high school early to come to Ohio State, makes $1 million. But nobody's talking about the good stuff. I want to give you an example. Built Bar Company. I didn't know who the heck they were, but they went to BYU and they paid for every single walk-on their scholarship for their full entire collegiate career. They made them employees at their company and paid for their entire academic scholarship throughout their entire time at BYU. These are the great stories that can come out of the name, image, and likeness as we allow these businesses to be able to support these players. Don't get me wrong. We're going to have issues that are going to come up with this. We're going to have to refine the rules. We're going to have to make sure that we have this all under control. But let's not resist change for the sake of resisting change. Let's understand that a lot of really good things can come out of this. We just got to hold on tight and regulate it as it comes in. But I think it's great for college football. And I'm excited to read a lot of other great stories that these businesses can do to take care of some of these kids while they're playing for us on Saturdays.
There's a lot of good in college football, a lot of good stories that go unnoticed, that's for sure. And that was definitely one of them. So, guys, we'll do it again in a few weeks, but I appreciate everybody coming on tonight. Jake, good luck tomorrow.
Yes, good luck, Coach.
Game, and
we'll get them.
It was a lot of fun, guys. So we'll do it again soon.
Thanks, Brock.